What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another FPL video on Fantasy Football Scout. We haven't done a transfer watch video for a little while just because of all the chaos over Christmas with the quick turnarounds in game weeks, all the doubles and blanks to talk about. But because we got a little bit of a break before game week 20, I thought I would do one. And there's a lot of transfers being made for some quite popular players, both in and out. And as always in this video, we're going to go through two popular transfers out, two popular transfers in as well. Talk about why people are doing it, whether it's a mistake, whether you should be holding, avoiding, etc., buying or selling those players, right? So we start off with Zouma, 110,575 transfers out already at the time of recording. Now, a lot of frustration for FPL managers in game week 19, the double game week, because he didn't play in either of Chelsea's matches. Obviously, they didn't keep a clean sheet against Leicester anyway. So I guess that one didn't matter quite as much, but missing the Fulham game was a bit frustrating, unless you're one of my friends who has got Saka coming off the bench, but that's a whole other story, and I've already moaned at him about that. But yeah, so some people will be in a good position where they'll have a good bench option. For those of you that bench boosted, obviously it's incredibly frustrating. And the problem is now, we don't know if he's lost his place, but we're kind of assuming he has, because Frank Lampard kind of made comments which suggested that he was making changes because he wasn't happy with things. And obviously Zouma missed out against Fulham. Now you could put that down to, okay, maybe he's just saying that, really it's a rest. But then if you miss Leicester as well, which is a huge game, right? Leicester are no pushovers, that's why they're top of the league. Then that kind of tells me that he's been dropped. Now, obviously, Leicester scored twice. Chelsea didn't keep a clean sheet. They didn't play particularly well anyway. So could he be reinstated for the next game? Possibly. But then you're holding a player that's kind of worth more than 5.5 million and wondering whether that money is better spent elsewhere. And obviously, one of the reasons that he's being transferred out so heavily is John Stones has just got a mega haul. People have realised that Man City's fixtures are actually quite good for the next three. And that is a very easy swap where you also save some money. And to be honest, depending on when you got Zouma, you can probably go straight to Diaz as well, right? Especially if you've got a little bit of money left over. So I can see why people are making this move. I don't think this is a bad move at all, to be honest, because holding on to someone that's so expensive, right? This isn't just a bench option that you can just leave to rot. This is a lot of money in your defence on the line. And it does feel to me like he's lost his place. And I think you're betting on whether he wins it back straight away. And if you don't win that bet, then it's going to hurt you even more. The fixtures are quite kind for Chelsea, though. That's the only thing that would maybe doubt myself if I owned him about transferring him out, because they've got Wolves at home, Burnley at home, and then Sheffield United away in the next four. The only tricky fixture really is Spurs away. So that's a little bit of a worry, but ultimately I think this is a good sell for people. I don't think they should necessarily be holding on to him. I think Man City is just too good to turn down right now. If you've got a little bit of money left over, you could go up to Chilwell anyway, potentially down to Reece James as well. He seems to be back playing now. Hopefully he can keep up his fitness for the next few games. And like I said, the fixtures are quite kind for Chelsea right up until game week 25. In terms of defensive returns. So I know they've not been playing well, but I don't think it's necessarily the right time to jump off Chelsea players in terms of defenders. But for Zouma in particular, it probably is, because we can't guarantee that he's still got his place. So Vardy up next, 53,000 transfers out. Not quite as many as Zouma, but there is obviously some frustration with managers who had him for the double game week, given that he's just blanked, got no points. I think it was 4 in total, same as Soucek. But obviously the problem with Vardy is he costs a lot more money. He costs 10 plus million, and that eats up a big chunk of your budget at a time where there's a lot of big hitters doing well. A lot of people maybe have already got De Bruyne, Fernandes, Salah, Son, whoever it might be, but want another one, or they haven't got they've only got 2 of those 4 and they want to get another person in, or Harry Kane is someone on people's radars, etc. I think Jamie Vardy is a tough one to call most of the time, because he does go through phases where he doesn't get too many shots. Like watching the Chelsea game last night, he himself didn't get a huge amount of chances in that game. He did set up quite a few. There was a few good key passes, but in terms of shots, he didn't get a huge amount. He's had 8 shots in the box over the last 4 matches, 1.2 expected goals. Not bad. That doesn't include penalties, of course, which we know he's on. For me, I don't think this is a bad sell, just because there's so many other big hitters, and obviously on a team-by-team basis, it will change about which player you want to get in. But looking at the fixtures, they've got Everton away, Leeds at home, Fulham away, and Wolves away. Now, that's not a bad time to be playing Wolves right now, and I think even though that's 4 game weeks away, in terms of days, it's only about 12 or 13 days after the game week 20 deadline until the game week 23 one. So there's not much time in between. Wolves are not playing well right now. So Vardy would have a good chance against them. I think Leeds, there's always a chance of goals there, especially for a team like Leicester. Let's not forget they're top of the league, right? Can they win it? I don't want to back against them given what happened before. I think it still seems unlikely because Man City are playing so well. But Leicester are a good team. They have been for years now. So that's going to be a tough game for Leeds, a tough game for Wolves. Fulham away, Everton away, maybe arguably a little bit tougher. Leicester do have 3 away games in the next 4. But overall, as a group of fixtures, that's quite good. Wolves away is in game week 23. In that same game week, Kane plays West Brom at home, so that could be a good opportunity to swap back because before that, Kane has Liverpool and Chelsea to come in the next 3 game weeks. So arguably, if that was your move, I'd probably keep Vardy for 3 game weeks and then reassess in game week 23 whether you want Vardy against Wolves away or Kane against West Brom at home. And that's an easy swap then. Obviously, you'll need some money in the bank because Kane's not quite the same price, but he's not a huge amount more. It's less than $1 million, I believe. So that could be something to do. So I don't think I would necessarily be selling Vardy. If I had my captains in place for the next 3 game weeks, so I don't think I would captain him, maybe against Leeds in game week 21. But in that same week, De Bruyne plays Sheffield United at home. So I feel like he's a slightly better option, but I wouldn't necessarily back against Vardy. So I feel like he could be a hold right now. I don't know if I would necessarily be getting rid of him, but I can see why people are doing it just because there's so many other big hitters. But if it's just because of the double game week, I think remember that one of those games was Chelsea. That was always going to be tough. And okay, he didn't score in the other one. He's got good fixtures to come. I'd maybe hold on for a few more weeks, depending on who you're transferring out for. If it's for someone like De Bruyne, then fair enough. If not, maybe wait and make that Kane transfer in game week 23. So if Vardy was a popular transfer out, Maddison is a popular transfer in. 84,000 and counting already at the time recording this. And he has scored 3 game weeks in a row, so 1 goal in each. Plus, he's only 7.1 million, so he's quite cheap. And obviously, like Jamie Vardy, he's got the same fixtures. So Everton away, Leeds at home, Fulham away, Wolves away. Pretty good price, easy to slot in. And I'm trying to think about how people's structures are probably set up right now. So again, you've probably got at least 2 of De Bruyne, Fernandes, Son. In most cases, I know not everyone's team is going to be the same. And then you've got a few other kind of places in midfield, maybe cheap strikers up front, perhaps Kane or Vardy is your most expensive. So at 7.1 is quite easy to fit in. Do I like this transfer? I think it's a bit premature to be going this early because someone like Jack Grealish is not much more expensive. And in my opinion, if everything was equal, so fixtures, minutes and stuff like that, I feel like Jack Grealish is the better option. Now, fixtures-wise, you could argue whether Leicester's fixtures are better than Aston Villa's. I think Aston Villa from game week 20 have a pretty good run. And they will have double game weeks to come, although we don't know how early they're going to be because they're not in Europe like Man City, so there's no rush to necessarily rearrange them, Aston Villa's fixtures straight away. But we'll see what happens there. So it's a toss-up between kind of Maddison, Barnes and Grealish. And I think out of all 3 of those players, just because they're the same price point, and I feel like that's the 3 players people are going to be looking at this week, I actually feel like Maddison is the bottom of the pile of those 3. I know he scored 3 goals in a row, and you could say that's form, but at the same time, he's only had 3 shots in the box in his last 4 matches. He's not someone that gets into the box often. Now, he did last night. Really good finish, by the way. Don't take anything away from it. It was a really good finish. He was in the right position. And afterwards, interestingly, when you saw his kind of post-match interview, essentially, it went on for quite a long time. I feel like players don't usually interview for that long. It was like 4 or 5 minutes long, and he was talking about tactics. He was talking about how, you know, he models himself, or he wants to start modeling himself on someone like Frank Lampard, arriving late into the box and scoring more goals. So it's something he wants to do, right? But 3 shots in the box in the last 4 weeks tells me that it's not necessarily happening yet. So he's obviously in a bit of a hot streak, and he does have the fixtures, right? I wouldn't kind of begrudge anyone bringing in players ahead of kind of Everton, Leeds, Fulham, right? Don't get me wrong. But I just feel like if it's a toss-up between him and Barnes, right now their minutes are quite similar. Barnes is playing like 80 to 90 minutes most games, and he tends to get in the box to be shooting a bit more than Maddison. Now, it's not to take away assists, right? Jack Grealish, for example, gets most of his points from assists rather than goals, or at least his underlying numbers are much higher for kind of expected assists than they are for expected goals, but he usually tops up with bonus. In Leicester, for example, as soon as Vardy scores, he's getting the bonus points, right? So he kind of nicks it off him. So the chances created are good, but the expected assists over the last 4 matches is just 0.47, so it's not massively high either. So I don't think people are making a mistake, but I think they're jumping on based on 3 goals, looking at that as form. I would look at it as, can he keep that up? We've seen him go on kind of runs before. I owned him, I think it was last season. He went on a really good run, and they won a stretch of like 9 to 10 games and didn't score at all. And obviously you shouldn't take into account previous seasons. I'm sure he's improved as a player. I'm sure Rodgers has got tactics more nailed down now than he maybe did before. So I'm not kind of taking anything away from him, but he is someone that tends to score a lot of his goals from outside the box, and that's great, right? They look really good, but they're hard to replicate game over game over game. So for me, he's a good price. I don't think at that kind of price you're really taking too much of a risk, because a lot of your budget is elsewhere anyway. But I just wonder if Harvey Barnes is a slightly better option at Leicester. Or perhaps once we see Aston Villa play in Game Week 19, they've still got Man City and Newcastle to come before we even get to Game Week 20. Are we all going to suddenly realise, actually, Jack Grealish, the 4th highest scoring mid so far this year, is still really good? So I would monitor that before you bring him in and before you make any rash decisions. Obviously, it's still early in Game Week 19 before we get to Game Week 20. So arguably, we shouldn't be making too many transfers anyway. But I just think this is potentially a bit of an avoid, James Maddison. But let me know in the comments below if you disagree. Next up, one of my favourite FPL players, Antonio. I think a lot of people in the community have got a bit of a soft spot for him. Now, if you look at the numbers, he's only got 5 shots in the box over the last 4 matches. But his expected goals are higher than Jamie Vardy. And also, his minutes, I think, were the least out of all the players I've talked about today. Already 96,000 transfers in. Now, obviously, in the double game week, he had quite a good couple of fixtures, right? Burnley at home, West Brom at home. The fixtures after this are kind of okay. So Palace away is decent enough. Palace aren't in great form right now at all. They're conceding goals all over the place. I don't think West Ham are necessarily a side that's going to go and smash a team kind of 3-4, 5-0. But when they do score, Antonio is quite often involved when he's on the pitch. So that's decent. Liverpool at home is a tough fixture. Whatever anyone says about the defence, Liverpool is still a really hard defence to get past. So that's not ideal. Villa away is also not ideal, though it's a little bit easier than Liverpool. And then it's Fulham away. And again, a lot of people will point out that Fulham are maybe looking a little bit better now. So West Ham's fixtures are not necessarily ideal, right? They're not Burnley at home and West Brom at home, but he is so cheap. At 6.3 million, he's only going to arise when these transfers keep going in. And when he's on the pitch, he gets chances. We saw last year, his non-penalty XG was over 0.6 per 90 minutes. This year, it is down, but it's still really good for a forward. And also, compared to last year when he was a midfielder, obviously he got an extra point for the goal, an extra point for clean sheet. But this year, he's kind of getting more in on the bonus. So, as an owner last year, obviously when he got the 4 goals against Norwich, very easy to get to 3 bonus. But outside of that, he kind of struggled a bit. Whereas this year, we've seen it in the Burnley game, fair enough, he scored the only goal. And in West Brom, there was only a couple of other goals as well. But he was straight to the top of the bonus points, right? Which I think is ideal. So it's a bit like Danny Ings last year. You get 1 goal, you get your 3 bonus. And it seems to be like that with Antonio as well at the moment. Now, we'll have to see how that carries on. So, for me, I do think he's still a really good pick. I know the fixtures are not ideal, but when you look at the other cheap strikers right now, I think you've got Bamford, who I expect a lot of people are kind of put off by now after the blank against Brighton, but I would not write Leeds off just yet. And they also play Newcastle next, so he's a good one. Calvert-Lewin, Everton's fixtures are about to get quite good as well. They've got a couple of decent fixtures in there. I think they've got Newcastle, Leeds over this next run, so we'll have to see if he gets back fit. But he's obviously not quite as cheap as Antonio and co. He's still over 7.5 million. And then you got Watkins at Villa. We'll have to wait and see how they play, how they do, how fit they are, etc. So there's not a huge amount of cheap forward options right now. So I think if you're going that way, where you're taking a bit of money out of the forward line, I still think he's a really good pick. Now, obviously, there's some fitness concerns. He is not the most fit player in terms of kind of not getting injured, essentially. That probably would have been a better way of wording that. But you know what I mean. He gets injured quite a bit, and that's why he's missed a lot of this season. But obviously, we saw with Ings last year, if you ignore a player that is injury prone, but then they go for a good few matches without getting injured, you miss out on a lot of points. And obviously, if you bring him in, you can always take him back out. You don't want to be spending too many transfers right now, but I just think for Antonio, it's possibly worth it if you've not got another striker up front that you kind of want right now. Moyes has said he was quite tired in the last game, and obviously they are going to have to we know they're going to try and manage his minutes, so I wouldn't expect him, for example, to start in the FA Cup. I'd be extremely surprised. And I've also been quite surprised about the amount of minutes he's played in the last 2 fixtures. But I think if they get into a position, maybe against Palace, where they're 2-3-0 up, if they can get that 3rd goal, then I think you'll start to see him come off more and more often. But they obviously need to get ahead before they can let that happen. And against Burnley, it was only 1-0, and they obviously didn't want to let that slip. So I do think he's going to get his minutes managed. I think most of the time, if they can not have to have him on for 90 minutes, they won't. But we've seen how often he can do damage before that. So a little bit of a risk because of the fixtures, but the price is so good and he is such a good player, I still think it's a good buy. So there we go. That's it for this one. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the players I've talked about. Do you think I've got it wrong? Do you think we should be keeping Zouma a little bit longer, going for Maddison, ignoring Antonio, for example? Let me know in the comments below. If you have enjoyed it, please do give it a like and hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. We'll have plenty more content this week and next week as we get towards Game Week 20, and obviously 21, 22 and 23 are going to be right around the corner as well. So make sure you hit that notification bell when you subscribe, and I'll catch you again soon.